Alright, so you want to play Pure Shadow? After taking a bit of a break, I've come back and decided to look for another build that could excel in Mythic Plus dungeons. A friend of mine recommended that I try out Pure Shadow, and to be honest, I was pretty skeptical of it at first. But after playing the build through a variety of content, I've come to really love its insane AoE damage. Of course, let me show you what I mean. As usual, we'll start off by breaking down what exactly Pure Shadow does. Dealing specifically damage with Shadow Bolt grants you a stack of Pure Shadow, increasing your Shadow spell critical strike chance by 1%, stacking up to 10 times. Casting Shadow Fury with 10 stacks triggers a Shadow Crash on that same location, dealing a ridiculous amount of shadow damage to any enemies hit. Shadow Crash is a huge portion of this build's damage, so utilizing Pure Shadow correctly in dungeons and raids will become an integral part of your DPS. Keep in mind, it takes a long time to stack Pure Shadow 10 times, so rather than stacking it every pack, focus on preserving your stacks of Pure Shadow in between mob pack pulls, even if this means occasionally pulling a mob or boss, you know, here or there. But in all seriousness, maintaining 10 stacks of Pure Shadow massively improves your damage momentum. Also, if this wasn't clear, casting Shadow Fury with 10 stacks of Pure Shadow will not consume your Pure Shadow stacks. This is a key reason why maintaining 10 stacks of Pure Shadow is really important for your damage. Your rotation and strategy in this build will be to weave Shadow Bolts and Shadow Furies together with Shadow Burn, which with Dusk Till Dawn further pumps up your AoE Shadow damage. Couple this with Mind Blast to trigger the talents Shadow Weaving and Backdraft, and you'll start annihilating swaths of enemies with ease. Before getting into level 1 abilities, let me first explain an underlying strategy in this build. This being, I've chosen to specifically stack the Spirit stat. This was done to take advantage of certain talent spells and REs. I won't be going over them all just yet, but a lot of the effects I use are aimed at a spirit stacking version of this build. I'll of course point them out when they come by, but this should hopefully dispel any initial confusion as to why I chose certain spells over others before we get into talents. Also, to clarify, this means I collect gear, items, and enchants with the spirit stat over the intellect stat. However, your primary stat is still intellect, not spirit. This is because choosing intellect as your primary stat doubles your spell damage, while spirit only doubles your healing power. Anyways, let's get into level 1 abilities. I like to start Shadow Bolt, Corruption, and Life Tap. Your 4th spell really isn't important, so take whatever you want. Typically, Summon Imp is a good choice here, but due to the spirit stacking strategy, you won't have space for the Demonic Knowledge talent. Plus, it takes up a rare slot. While leveling up, you'll need to either card or naturally roll Mind Blast, Shadow Burn, and Shadow Fury. As stated previously, these spells are core in your rotation, so pick them up if you see them. Also, I'd really recommend carding Shadow Fury in this build. It's core to your rotation, epic, and a level 50 spell, so it's really hard to get naturally. For non-core abilities, be on the lookout for passive buffs like Divine Spirit, Flame Tongue Weapon, Spell Stones, Fire Stones, Shadow Form, Molten Armor, and Fell Armor. Divine Spirit is additional spirit, Flame Tongue Weapon, and to a lesser extent, Spell Stones and Fire Stones are great weapon enhancements. Shadow Form is an amazing 10% damage buff, which is definitely worth skill carding if you have it. And finally, Molten Armor and Fell Armor both take advantage of your high spirit, converting 5% of it into spell crit and hit, respectively. You'll also want some damage cooldowns. Arcane Power, Power Infusion, Icy Veins, and Metamorphosis are all great options that are definitely worth skill carding if you have them. To end off, be sure to grab some utility spells. I like to take Dispel Curse, Cleanse, Wind Shear, Feign Death, Purge, and Innervate. Dispel Curse and Cleanse help you remove harmful debuffs. Wind Shear is a great range kick. Feign Death is a fantastic threat reset. And Innervate is a great mana CD for your group members. In this build, you basically have infinite mana due to the Spirit Tap talent, so don't worry about rolling any mana spells while leveling up. Plus, you already have Life Tap, which should suffice in any emergency situations. Finally, for legendary spells, Metamorphosis is a great damage CD, and Blink is fantastic mobility, helping you keep your Pure Shadow stacks up between any longer distance mob packs. With that, let's move on to Mystic Enchantments. Your legendary is obviously Pure Shadow, but for epic enchantments, I like to take Dusk Till Dawn, Mind Burn, and Pendulum. Dusk Till Dawn causes your Shadow Burn to hit up to 8 targets, but gain a 2-second cast time. In addition, casting any direct damage spell increases the damage of your Shadow Burn by 3%, stacking up to 5 times. Casting Shadow Burn with 5 stacks of Dusk Till Dawn consumes them and causes your Shadow Burn to apply corruption to any target hit. Although this effect is seemingly straightforward, there's a lot of underlying power here worth mentioning. Past its high damage cleave effect, the fact that it applies corruption at 5 stacks means you won't ever have to cast or recast corruption in your rotation, as it does it automatically. On top of this, corruption is applied to all mobs hit, so corruption can be ticking on up to 8 mobs at once. This is insane when combined with Eradication and Molten Core, both of which grant a ridiculous proc effect on your corruption ticks. Basically, Dusk Till Dawn is really important in this build. You really boost your damage, plus it's just fun to use, so that's always cool. Next, Mind Burn increases the damage of your Shadow Burn by 25% and causes Shadow Burn to trigger the Darkness talent. This is primarily used for its damage boost to Shadow Burn, and that's basically it. Finally, Pendulum provides some free caster stats. For lower rarity REs, I take Fierce Mind, Balance of Power, Improved Shadow Bolt, Celestial Focus, Dark Embrace, Precision, and Darkness. Fierce Mind converts Spirit into Spell Power for some general damage. Balance of Power and Precision are both hit chance. Improved Shadow Bolt and Celestial Focus, Dark Embrace, and finally Darkness simply boost your damage in one way or another. Moving on to talents, I'll be splitting talents into either support or damage depending on their effect. For damage talents, I grab Backdraft, Bane, Eradication, Improved Shadow Bolt, Molten Core, Ruin, Shadow and Flame, and Shadow Weaving. Backdraft grants 3 25% casting speed buffs for specifically destruction spells. This triggers whenever you cast Mind Blast, Shadow Burn, or Shadow Fury. This talent is really strong, so make sure to weave its stacks in between your rotation. Bane reduces the cast time of your Shadow Bolt. Eradication causes corruption to sometimes grant 20% haste. Improved Shadow Bolt is 15% Shadow Bolt damage. Molten Core is yet another proc effect on corruption, sometimes granting 18% damage and 30% crit chance to your Shadow Bolt. Ruin is double crit damage for your destruction spells. Shadow and Flame increases the spell power scaling of your main rotation, plus reduces the cooldown of your Shadow Fury. And finally, Shadow Weaving is a 2% shadow damage buff that triggers whenever you cast a Shadow Priest spell. This stacks up to 5 times for a 10% total shadow damage buff. You should be able to maintain this buff exclusively through Mind Blast. For support talents, I grab Darkness, Death's Grasp, Demonic Aegis, Spirit Tap, Improved Spirit Tap, Meditation, and Student of the Mind. Darkness is, admittedly, not an optimal talent in this build. I personally enjoy how it makes the rotation feel, but you can easily substitute it for Shadow Mastery if you prefer. Death's Grasp is simply hit and haste, and Demonic Aegis doubles the hit chance granted from Fell Armor, equating to about 2% hit chance per talent point. If you didn't manage to roll Fell Armor while leveling up, grab Elemental Precision instead. Now, I'll be going a bit more into depth about the Spirit stacking talents. Spirit Tap was mentioned previously, but to reiterate, this talent basically gives you infinite mana through its 75% mana regen while casting buff. It also grants 30% additional spirit. Improved Spirit Tap causes Spirit Tap to also convert 20% of your total spirit into spell crit. Plus it grants Spirit Tap the ability to trigger from shadow spell criticals. This talent combo is really no joke. It triggers all the time, and when it does, my spell crit jumps up by 9%. That's almost 2% crit per talent point. With more gear, it'll easily go higher. Next, Meditation is 25% mana regen while casting, and its capstone converts 15% of your total spirit into spell crit. The first effect on Meditation directly synergizes with Spirit Tap, giving you 100% of your MP5 while casting. As for the second effect, it's fairly self-explanatory. For me, this provides about 6% crit chance, which again, only goes higher. To finish off the main spirit stacking talents, Student of the Mind is 15% total spirit, plus 15% spirit into spell power conversion. This currently grants me around 160 spell power. Keep in mind, these spirit stacking talents scale really well with stats. Due to this, I found spirit stacking to be the most powerful version of this build, due to its insanely high conversion rates. Before I end off, I wanted to quickly mention that this build, as well as many of my older builds, were posted to the online builder on the Ascension website. I recommend anyone looking to try some new builds to check it out, link in the description. And that does it for my Gun on Pure Shadow. This build is super sweet, and I recommend it to anyone looking to play a fluid caster build that does some crazy AoE damage. Otherwise though, thanks for watching, and have a good one.